Hi everyone, this is Chris from Power User Tech with a quick tutorial on how to get set up on OBS. This tutorial is geared towards people who are wanting to stream to Twitch, record their gameplay, and have the best possible quality on their stream. Some of the common issues that beginners face and that I faced is audio issues. Oftentimes you will hear a robot voice or an echo, or maybe your stream isn't showing up properly. I'm going to address these issues throughout this tutorial. So make sure you download the most recent version of OBS because that is the one I'll be speaking on. It's 22.0.2. It's a free software, and pretty much OBS is a software that allows you to record gameplay or record anything that happens in your monitor and upload it to a streaming service. You can also download it or record it onto your device locally. So let's get into it. Now, you're going to want to set up a scene once you have OBS running. A scene is basically a collection of sources. Think of the sources as little additions you're making to a painting. In the end, you're going to have things like the follower goal or most recent follower all fitted onto your display capture. But before we get into that, let's go over some basics on the settings side. I have the dark theme enabled from the general settings, but other than that, I don't think I've changed anything here. Everything has stayed to default. If I missed anything, I'm just going to scroll through my settings so you guys can look at that. Feel free to pause whenever necessary. Stream settings. You're going to want to pick your streaming service. I have only streamed to Twitch, so I do not know if some of these settings will apply to other streaming services. Pick your closest server. For me, it's in Los Angeles, and you can find your stream key from within your settings on the Twitch website. So you sign in, go to your channel, go to settings, and under channel settings, you should be able to find your stream key. Keep in mind, this is a private key and should not be shared with anybody. Output. Now, there's two main encoders that people use. I know one is X264 and the other one is NVENC or something like that. X264 is a more CPU intensive encoder, which means the Intel i7 that I have will be doing the brunt of the encoding. Now, if you have a weaker processor like an i5, you can actually use the other encoder if you have a beefier GPU. However, some reviews state that X264 will bring the highest quality overall, and that is why I've chosen this for my streams. The rescale output. I don't know if it's necessary to enforce streaming service encoder settings, but I just have it enabled. More experimentation to be done on my end, but 1280 by 720 is what I rescale it to. Rate control. By default, set to CBR, so I just left it there. Bitrate. You're going to want to start off with 2,500. That is probably the standard that a lot of people talk about when starting out. Bitrate, generally, as you increase it, will result in a smoother looking stream, less artifacts. But the higher your bitrate is, the more of a draw it takes on your encoder, which is going through either the CPU or the GPU. And it also is slightly reliant on your internet speed. So I am running about 15 megabit upload. If you have less than that, your bitrate might vary depending on what kind of quality you're getting. Because remember, higher bitrate, more information is getting encoded and pushed through the network up to the viewer. So make sure when you're doing your first test streams to start by only changing your bitrate about 500 at a time. Really analyze and play with one setting first before increasing your bitrate. Bitrate is probably the easiest setting you can change without having a major effect on your performance. It is often overlooked because it depends on a couple different factors. So it's not very clear whether increasing your bitrate will improve your stream overall. But generally, a higher bitrate is better. Next, keyframe interval. I have it set to 2 because during my research, everyone pretty much talked about setting it at 2. I don't know why. CPU usage preset. So by default, this is set to very fast. I have it set to faster. That is because my CPU is a little bit beefier with i7. And as you go down lower and lower, you use more and more and more CPU. This will have the biggest difference on the quality of your stream. It will also have the biggest difference on the performance of your computer while gaming. After switching it to faster, I did notice a slight drop in performance and frames on Fortnite, but after adjusting to it, it's not that much of a difference. So I started with changing this setting first and then messing around with my bitrate. These are the settings I ended up with. I have an i7 7th gen. I have 16 gigs of RAM, and I also have my GPU is at 1080. So that is my settings. If you have like a lower performing computer, you might have to go up actually to very fast or super fast, use less CPU, and maybe have a higher bitrate or use a different encoder. If you have any questions about this, about your exact configuration, leave a comment below or send me a message on Instagram or Twitter. I'm always happy to help. Audio settings. This is where I had a lot of issues, and I still see beginner streamers messing up. It's not your fault. It's actually how Windows manages audio devices. Desktop audio device should be set to whatever your system's going to be playing back the audio to. So if you're playing from a gaming headset, you're going to want to set this to your headphones. Disable audio device 2. Next, mic. Set it to whatever mic you're using. If your headphone has a mic, make sure you specify that your headphones are the ones getting the sound and the mic is the one recording your voice. In my case, I have a Yeti, so it's a little bit easier for me. Disable everything else. Decay rate, have it set to fast, and peak meter type is simple peak or sample peak. I think that was default settings. Okay, next up, video settings. My base or canvas resolution is what my monitor displays. My monitor is a 1080p monitor, so that is what the base resolution will be. But what I want it to be sending to Twitch and to my viewers is 720p. So this is my output or scaled resolution. By downscaling, I hope that's the right term, your quality of stream will generally be higher and more people will be able to watch your stream without any hiccups. That is because not everyone has 4G LTE on their phones or the fastest Wi-Fi, and oftentimes a really high quality stream will struggle and stutter on your viewer's phone. So you want the most people to be able to see your stream, therefore you're going to go with 720p. You can even go lower, depending on your setup. Just make sure to test with a test device like an iPhone or something nearby. Downscale filter. This is common consensus that bicubic is the best all around. I won't get into specifics, just go with that one. Common FPS values, you're going to want to put it at 30 FPS first. This has to stay at 30 FPS until you figure out your other settings, and then you can bump it up to 60 frames per second and then see how it affects your stream. Hotkeys. You can use this to set up hotkeys for starting and stopping your stream, switching scenes. This is a little bit more advanced, but once you kind of know what you want in your stream, you can set this up. Now, lastly, I have my process priority as normal, and that is because I don't want OBS to tell my computer to put more priority on the OBS application. I just prefer it that way. And these are the rest of my settings. I don't know if I've changed anything here. I think I've left everything by default. So just if I missed anything, take a look here. Make sure to pause. Okay, now I just want to go back to the audio settings. Now remember, after setting up this page right here, you're going to want to make sure your audio devices are being managed properly by Windows. So you could search audio or manage audio devices. And let me kind of explain how this works. In your playback tab, this is where by default Windows will play back sound. I currently have headphones that it's playing back sound to, and I have a pair of speakers for when I don't want to use my headphones. Okay. Now, oftentimes you can have a default or default communication device, but it doesn't really matter so much on the playback page, but it does matter on the recording page. Oh, by the way, any devices that you're not using on the playback page for playback, you're going to want to disable it because you don't want Windows to get confused as to where it's playing back to. On the recording side, this is what Windows will listen to when you're streaming from OBS. In my case, I have my headset microphone set as default device. I know the naming is kind of weird, but it's playing back audio to my headphones. So when I'm playing games, I can hear gunshots and all that stuff. And I have my Yeti microphone set as my default communications device. That means whenever an application requests audio recording, the Yeti is going to be the default device. So if I'm playing Fortnite or it doesn't matter which game, it will pick up my voice from my Yeti and record that as voice audio. Okay, so default communications, microphone, and your headset's going to be your default playback. Okay, now disable everything else. You might have to do this a couple times because oftentimes I found that Windows will reactivate a device or switch which one's default and communications device. But after pulling your hair out maybe once or twice, you'll know what to set here. Okay. This is, I haven't changed anything here. And communications, Windows can automatically adjust the volume of different sounds when you are using your PC to place or receive telephone calls. I don't really know what this does, so I just set it to do nothing because I don't want it to be reducing volume of anything. Okay. So again, most confusing part will just be disabling stuff you don't use, setting your proper playback devices, and then under the recording tab, disabling stuff you don't use, and then figuring out which one you're supposed to set as your default device and which one you're supposed to set as your communications device. Microphones, communication, playback device, default device. Got it? Sources. Okay, so in your sources, you can set up your display capture by pressing the plus button and hitting display capture. You're gonna set it up as like regular display. Make sure to pick the right one if you have multiple monitors because you want to set the one that's going to be recorded. And then here you can adjust desktop audio, which is really useful if you have a really loud game. Number 2, you want your mic. So make sure to add your mic. Okay, you can do that by plus audio input capture. And then, choose your Yeti or whatever. You can also set up a webcam, which once you plug it into your computer and set up the drivers, should show up as a selectable source when choosing a, let's see, I think it's media source. It'll be a media source that you're adding. Okay. I will make a separate tutorial for stuff like the follower goal and most recent follower. But basically, this is a link you're plugging into OBS and it detects it as a browser source and updates it live while people follow you. It's a little more advanced, but first let's get you all set up here, and then the next video will be on how to set this up. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this video, you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments below. Other than that, have a great day streaming, guys.